Hello, dear book lovers! Today, I will take you on a journey through one of the most fascinating treasures in human history, the world's most expensive books. Have you ever wondered why these books are so expensive? Consider this. That old volume you see on a library shelf might actually hold the heart of an era in history. A book is not merely paper and ink. Within it lies the spirit of civilization, the voice of ideas, and humanity's deepest secrets. That's why some books are so valuable that they only circulate among collectors or billionaires. Though their prices are measured in millions of dollars, their true value is far greater because they are a mirror of an era. But why does a book sell for millions of dollars? Here are a few reasons. Historical significance. If a book has been a turning point in human history, its value multiplies. For example, the Gutenberg Bible, one of the first printed books, is not only a religious text, but also a symbol of the revolution that began with the invention of the printing press. Leonardo. Imagine holding a book in your hands that only a few copies of remain in the world. This is priceless for collectors. Like anything else that is scarce, rare books also gain value. The importance of the author. If the author of the book is a historical figure like Shakespeare, Chaucer, or Leonardo da Vinci, the value of the work increases even more. Artistic value. Some books are not only made up of words, but also of magnificent illustrations, miniatures, and handcrafted covers. They are works of art. But the most fascinating part is this. Each of these books is not only a treasure for wealthy collectors, but also a treasure of human history for all of us. Because within these pages lie knowledge, art, beliefs, and dreams passed down through the ages. Dear bookworms, in this video, we will discover the 10 most expensive books in the world, along with their stories. Some have survived wars, some have been kept in secret vaults, and some have changed hands over the centuries. Each one is as captivating as a novel, as stunning as a painting, and as valuable as a treasure. And so, our journey in pursuit of these books, sold for millions of dollars, begins. 1. Our first stop is the oldest printed book in American history, the Bay Psalm Book, that is, the Book of Psalms. Bay Psalm Book, 1640, a $14.2 million treasure. The year was 1640, in a continent newly separated from Europe, turbulent and full of uncertainty. Puritans, or Protestant communities, who had emigrated from England, were trying to build a new life in America. Their primary goal was not only to live freely in the new lands, but also to preserve their faith in their own language and according to their own understanding. It was with this spirit that the book emerged, becoming one of history's most precious works. The Bay Psalm Book, that is, the Book of Psalms. Printed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony of America, this book went down in history as the first book printed in the New World. Thus, this work was not merely a religious text, but also represented the birth of printing in America. Without this book, the history of printing in North America might have taken a very different course. Consider this. In the 17th century, printing was still centered in Europe. Just 200 years after Gutenberg's printing press, on the other side of the Atlantic, a group of immigrants managed to print their first books with limited resources. This was not only a symbol of their faith, but also a declaration of their freedom. The Bay Psalm Book contained an English poetic translation of the Psalms. However, this translation was not done for literary pleasure. What was important to the Puritans was the sacred meaning of the text. Therefore, the accuracy of the words took precedence over poetic harmony. The importance of this book does not stem solely from its religious content. It is also a cultural birth certificate. This work symbolizes the beginning of an era as the first book printed in America. Later, America would become one of the world's largest publishing centers. New York, Boston, and Philadelphia would become the centers of book publishing. Only 11 copies of this book are known to exist in the world. Most of these copies are preserved in large libraries and universities. In 2013, a copy sold at Sotheby's auction house fetched an incredible price of $14.2 million. Who was the buyer? American billionaire David Rubenstein. Rubinstein did not keep the book after purchasing it. On the contrary, he lent it to various museums for exhibition. Because for him, this book was not just an investment, but also a national treasure. The Bay Psalm book does not have a flashy appearance when viewed from the outside. It has no gold-leafed pages or ornate miniatures. Its covers are plain, its pages simple, but that is precisely what makes it valuable. Its value does not come from its appearance, but from the history it represents. The Bay Psalm book makes me think, sometimes the value of a book comes not from the lines written in it, but from the story it carries. This work may not contain as much literary beauty as Shakespeare's plays, but it carries the faith, courage, and struggle of immigrants to survive in a new world. That is why it is priceless. And now consider this. This book, once printed by a few immigrants living in mud-covered wooden houses, is now worth millions of dollars. This reminds us that books are not just repositories of knowledge, but also time capsules. We have left our first stop behind, dear book lovers. Next up is a symbol of one of humanity's greatest inventions. Born from the miracle of the printing press, this work emerged from the heart of Europe and changed the world. The Gutenberg Bible. 2. Gutenberg Bible, 1455. The miracle of printing, $5 to $6 million. Now, dear book lovers, we come to perhaps the most revolutionary book in history, the Gutenberg Bible. Named after its inventor, Johannes Gutenberg, this work is not merely a sacred text. It is also a symbol that launched the revolution in access to knowledge in human history. In the 1400s, knowledge was highly valuable, but equally inaccessible. Books were only reproduced in monasteries through the meticulous handwriting of monks that took months or even years. Owning a Bible was almost an exclusive privilege reserved for kings and wealthy aristocrats. In this context, a German inventor from Mainz, Johannes Gutenberg, made a discovery that would change the course of human history: the printing press using movable metal type. This machine made it possible to use the same letter hundreds of times, distribute ink evenly, and produce copies quickly. In other words, knowledge would no longer be monopolized and would gradually spread to the entire population. And the most magnificent product of this invention was the Gutenberg Bible. Printed around 1455, the Gutenberg Bible was the first book printed with movable metal type in the Western world. It is famous for its pages consisting of 42 lines. Hence, it is sometimes referred to as the 42-line Bible. But the real revolution was this: it was no longer necessary to wait years to produce a copy of the Bible. Gutenberg's printing press printed hundreds of copies in a short time. The Gutenberg Bible is not just a religious text, but actually the beginning of the modern age. Think about it. If Gutenberg had not made this invention, perhaps Martin Luther's ideas would not have spread so quickly, and scientific revolutions would not have developed so rapidly. The Gutenberg Bible is, in the truest sense of the word, the book that broke the chains of humanity's mind. Today, there are approximately 49 known copies in the world. Most of them are incomplete. Only a few complete copies remain. This rarity has increased its price to an incredible extent. A copy sold at Christie's auction in '94 fetched $5.4 million. Another copy is on display at a university library in Tokyo. If a complete copy were to be sold, experts estimate its price could reach $30 to $35 million. Dear book lovers, the Gutenberg Bible makes me think, sometimes a book is not just a book. It can change the course of an era. Without this work, perhaps we would still be waiting at the door of a wealthy patron's library to access knowledge. The Gutenberg Bible is not just a sacred text. It is also a symbol of freedom and knowledge gained for humanity. And that is why, even though its price is measured in millions of dollars, it is actually priceless. And now, dear bookworms, we are going to one of the greatest poets in history. The plays he wrote changed not only theater, but all of literature. Next up, Shakespeare's First Folio. 3. Shakespeare's First Folio, 1623. a $9 million theater treasure. Dear book lovers, we have now come to the greatest playwright in history, the immortal name of literature, William Shakespeare. His works are so powerful that they have transcended their own era and survived to this day. However, most of Shakespeare's plays circulated in irregular copies in the early years. If it weren't for the first folio published in 1623, we might not know half of his plays today. Published just 7 years after Shakespeare's death in 1623, this work brought together 36 of his plays. Compiled by his friends John Hemingway and Henry Condell, the book was actually the most important step in preserving Shakespeare's legacy. At the time, play texts were usually kept in the notes of theater companies and could easily be lost. Without the first folio, masterpieces such as Macbeth, Julius Caesar, and The Tempest might have been lost forever. The first folio is not just a literary collection. It is also one of the cornerstones of English culture. Shakespeare's plays transformed the language. Many of the idioms we use in everyday speech today actually originated from his pen. For this reason, the first folio is considered the holy book of the English language. It is known that only about 235 copies remain in the world. Most of them are incomplete or worn out. Complete and well-preserved copies are rare. A first folio sold at Christie's auction in 2020 found a buyer for a staggering $9 million. This shows how powerful Shakespeare's pen still is. Dear friends, the first folio makes me think. Literature is not only a legacy for the age in which it was written, but also for future generations. Without Shakespeare's words, the world would be much poorer. That is why the first folio is not just a book. It is humanity's collective memory. And now, our next stop on this journey, the magnificent prayer book of the Renaissance era, the Rothschild Prayer Book. 4. Rothschild Prayer Book, a prayer book. Worth $13.4 million. Dear book lovers, we are now touching a treasure, the Rothschild Prayer Book. This work is not just a book, but also an art gallery. The Rothschild Prayer Book is a book of hours, or personal prayer book, created around 1505 in the Flanders region. At that time, European nobles used specially prepared prayer books for their daily worship. However, this work is much more than an ordinary prayer book. It contains dozens of miniatures, handcrafted decorations, and gold-leafed edges. The pages are so vivid that they give the impression of looking at a painting. An aesthetic sensibility comparable to that of Leonardo or Van Eyck is hidden within the pages of this tiny book. The Rothschild Prayer Book, sold at Christie's auction in '99, found a buyer for a staggering $13.4 million. This was an incredible figure for a prayer book, as it was not merely a religious text, but also embodied the artistic spirit of the Renaissance. Every page of the book is like a jewel. It contains scenes from the Bible, depictions of saints, and illustrations of daily life. The colors are still vibrant. The Rothschild Prayer Book makes me think. Sometimes a book does not merely convey information. It also nourishes the soul with its beauty. This work is priceless in terms of art, faith, and history. It reminds us that books are not only treasures to be read, but also to be admired. And now, dear bookworms, we are traveling to medieval England. Before us is the masterpiece of Chaucer, the father of English literature, the Canterbury Tales. 5. The Canterbury Tales, the father of English literature, worth $11 million. Dear book lovers, we have now come to the first great poet of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer. His masterpiece, The Canterbury Tales, is not just a book of stories, but also a mirror reflecting the spirit of medieval England. The Canterbury Tales consists of stories told by a group of people embarking on a pilgrimage. Each character represents a different social class: knights, nuns, merchants, millers. Through these stories, Chaucer reveals the social structure, humor, and contradictions of a 14th century England. The work is not merely a narrative of a religious journey. It is also a celebration of human diversity. This is why Chaucer is often referred to as the father of English literature. Therefore, The Canterbury Tales is not just a collection of stories. but also one of the cultural cornerstones of English national identity. The work was first printed in 1477 by William Caxton. Caxton was a pioneer of printing in England. In 2011, a Caxton edition of the Canterbury Tales was sold at an auction in London for an extraordinary price of $11 million. This is one of the most expensive sales in the history of English literature. Dear bookworms, the Canterbury Tales reminds me that literature is not just entertainment, but also a mirror of society. Chaucer immortalized the people of his time. That is why, even though his book is worth millions of dollars, the soul of a nation is priceless. And now we come to a text that is much older and much more powerful. Not just a literary treasure, but a legal one, the Magna Carta. 6. Magna Carta, 1297. The foundation of law. Worth $21.3 million, approved by King John in 1215, the Magna Carta is a document that limits royal powers in England and guarantees the rights of the nobility. With its reapproval in 1297, the text strengthened its legal binding force. This document laid the foundation for modern democracies, constitutions, and legal systems. The Magna Carta is not just a parchment. It is a symbol of human rights and freedoms. The document was a major revolution in the political turmoil of the time. King John's powers were limited, and the nobles' rights to justice and property were guaranteed. As a result, the law emerged as a safeguard against arbitrary rule. Copies of the Magna Carta, dated 1297, are extremely rare. Today, only a few copies remain in the world. In 2007, a copy of the Magna Carta sold for $21.3 million. This makes it one of the most valuable documents in both history and the world of collecting. Dear bookworms, the Magna Carta shows me this. A text, even if it is not just words, can change the world. Human rights and the rule of law are not only the legacy of modern constitutions, but also of this ancient parchment. Even if it sells for millions of dollars, its true value lies in the freedom it has created for humanity. And now, our next stop on this journey, a monumental work of art documenting the breathtaking beauty of nature, Birds of America, John James Audubon. 7. Birds of America, a $11.5 million bird atlas. When John James Audubon decided to paint the birds of America in the 19th century, he created not only a work of art, but also a scientific masterpiece. Birds of America contains 435 life-size bird illustrations. This work is not only an art book, but also a record of America's biological diversity. Birds of America is considered one of the cornerstones of natural history science in America. Audubon's work is still used as a reference in modern ornithology and ecology. A very rare copy was sold for $11.5 million in 2010. Its large size, pages approximately 1.2 meters long, and limited print run make it a unique treasure for collectors. Dear book lovers, Birds of America shows me this. A book is not just words. Sometimes a book has the power to document nature, life, and beauty. Audubon's work, by blending science and art, has made an invaluable contribution to humanity's heritage. And now, our next stop on this journey, the notebook where science and art converge, Leonardo da Vinci's Codex Leicester. 9. Codex Leicester, the notebook of a genius worth $30.8 million. Dear book lovers, we now have before us one of the greatest geniuses in human history, Leonardo da Vinci, and his priceless work, Codex Leicester. The Codex Leicester is a scientific notebook prepared by Leonardo in the 16th century. It contains drawings related to astronomy, water movements, sky observations, geology, and engineering. Leonardo's genius is reflected on every page of this small notebook. In 1980, American businessman Bill Gates purchased the Codex Leicester for $30.8 million. This was one of the highest prices ever paid for a notebook at the time. Instead of keeping the notebook, Gates digitized it to contribute to the worlds of science and education. Dear book lovers, the Codex Leicester shows me this. A book or notebook can carry not only knowledge, but also creativity and genius. Leonardo's notes continue to inspire people centuries later. That is why, even though its value is measured in millions, its true worth lies in its place in humanity's heritage. And now we come to the final stop on our journey. Unique works that are not for sale in the world, yet are considered priceless. The Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient copies of the Quran, and the lost books of Alexandria. 10. Priceless books that are not sold anywhere in the world. Dear book lovers, we have reached the final stop on our journey. Now we are looking at priceless works that cannot be measured in millions, but are among the greatest treasures of human history. Dead Sea Scrolls. These parchments, dating from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD, contain the ancient texts of the Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls are priceless not only from a religious perspective, but also from the perspectives of history and linguistics. Ancient Quran manuscripts. Rare Quran manuscripts dating back centuries are among the most valuable documents in Islamic history. These manuscripts, found in museums such as the Egyptian Museum, Topkapi Palace, and others around the world, are priceless from religious, artistic, and historical perspectives. Lost Books of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria, the largest library of the ancient world, housed thousands of manuscripts. Unfortunately, most of them were lost. However, the list of lost books and the fragments that remain from history demonstrate the immense size of humanity's treasure trove of knowledge. If these works had survived to the present day, their incalculable value would be impossible to measure. These works carry historical and cultural value rather than material value. They are symbols of humanity's heritage that must be preserved. They are displayed in museums or libraries, representing the collective memory of world history. Dear book lovers, priceless books show us that books are not just for reading, but for preserving the heritage of humanity. They carry the wisdom and culture of the past to future generations. The value of these works cannot be measured in billions of dollars because their true value lies in the collective memory of humanity. And so, dear bookworms, we have completed the fascinating journey of the world's most valuable and expensive books. Each one is a part of its own era, culture, and humanity's heritage. These books remind us that knowledge, art, and history are priceless.